Hello friends, this is our very first pilot video, and I wanted to illustrate to everyone how to change the oil in their car. And because this was our pilot, I'm actually talking over the video here because we didn't have the mic on. But what I'm working on is a 2007 Toyota Corolla. These are very common vehicles. I currently have it up on jack stands, as you can see, and I've removed the tires, and I did this just to let a little more light in there and make it easier to show everybody how to do the steps of the oil change. So here's the basic tools of what you're going to need to do your oil change. You can see I've got an oil catch pan, I've got the oil itself, in this case it's 5W30. The oil filter, you can see I'm using a Fram. And then I've got a little funnel to pour the oil into the engine. And then I've got an oil filter wrench and a socket set. And that's to drain the oil plug, pull the oil plug so the oil will drain. And then to remove and put the filter on and off is what the filter wrench is for. So the very first thing you're going to have to do is to open the hood on your car. And here we've got a little pull pin release on the inside under the dash, and you can find the instructions for your own car in your owner's manual. Once you release the hood from the inside, the safety latch, then you come on the outside, and in this case underneath there's another little latch that you just push down that'll enable you to lift the hood, and then there's a little prop rod off to the side, and you just pull that up and set that under the hood to hold the hood up. And again, every car is going to be a little bit different, so you just got to look inside your owner's manual and it'll tell you how to open your hood.
So I've come under the car now to show you the oil filter, which I'm currently pointing to. This we're going to change, and the oil plug, which is located here. This we're going to remove in order to drain the oil. So really only two things that we need to touch: the drain plug and the filter. Okay, so we're going to take the oil filter off from underneath the car, and to do that I'm going to use this oil filter wrench, this little black piece here. You can get these for $2 or $3. They're metal, they'll last you a lifetime, and essentially what they do is they just fit right perfectly on the bottom of that oil filter. So you'll always want to know the oil filter for your car, because these can vary by size. But when you're getting an oil filter at the parts store, then just ask for an oil filter wrench that fits that oil filter, and you'll have that. Again, I mean, I've had, once I bought them, they last a lifetime. So. But I highly recommend this tool. The nice part about it, other tools, you know, kind of maybe go on the outside to rent. When you're in a tight space, it's pretty difficult to do that sometimes. What's nice about these is they go straight up on it, and with a wrench you can turn it, and you can put as long of an extension on the bottom of this as you need to make it easy to turn. So I really like these wrenches. Real inexpensive and easy to use. So I've got my oil filter wrench, and I've put it onto the oil filter, and I have my extension and my ratchet. This just puts it in a place that's comfortable for me to work. And the first thing I want to do is I want to loosen that oil filter up, and I do that by turning it counterclockwise. So you can see here. And it broke free. Once it breaks free, it's real easy to turn. You can actually turn it by hand. So I'm going to take this socket off, and I'm going to take the wrench off. And sometimes it sticks on there, so you gotta, I'll take it off later, but I'll just leave it as part of the oil filter. Now I've got my catch pan under here, and so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to spin this. As it loosens, it will start to spill some oil. And when it does, as you can see there, I just get my hand out of the way, let it go ahead and drain. And I let that drain until it's done draining, and then I go ahead and I continue to spin that filter off. Take a rag because it is a little bit oily, and then I just continue to spin that counterclockwise until you'll hear it start to rattle, and then I go ahead and I just tip it over and I dump it into my pan. Then I'm going to go wash my hands. The next thing we want to do is remove the drain plug. And this is a 15mm socket. And again, you want to go counterclockwise. Sometimes it's on there a little tight, but you can see I broke it loose. And again, like the oil filter, once it's loose, then it spins pretty easy. So I can actually do the rest by finger. I want to adjust my oil pan, make sure I have the oil fall in there. Then I just want to turn that out. Once it gets towards the end and gets wobbly, then the oil's going to come, so I keep pressure on it towards the pan until I know the threads are out, and then I just remove it. It fell in the pan, and that's okay. And then we just want to let the oil drain out. So once the oil stops draining out and it slows down to just a drip, drip, drip like this, what I do is I just wipe the surface to make sure that there's nothing there. A little bit of oil is going to be okay, but I just don't want any dirt. And then we just put the oil plug back in. Now I'm going to turn it to the right, clockwise. And that's going to tighten the plug. And I take it as far as I can finger tight. And then I'm going to switch my socket so that it goes the other way, which is clockwise. And then I'm just going to turn it till it's snug, and then just a little bit past snug. Just like that. That's all you need to do. You don't need to gorilla it on there or you won't get it off next time. So just to snug, and then just give it a little tug, tighten it up, and then I wipe all any excess off, because once we start it back up, we're going to make sure it's not leaking, so we want to dry it off like that, so then you can tell it's not leaking. Now I'm going to put the new oil filter on, but before I do, I want to clean this gasket surface. Just wipe off the excess oil. Got a lot of activity going on today. Dogs barking. People driving by. Hopefully you can still hear me here. So yeah, I want to wipe that surface area off, and also I'm making sure that that old gasket didn't stick to it. That's a lot of reasons why sometimes people's oil leaks after an oil change. Even if they pay to have it done, somebody will forget sometimes that old gasket, and I'll show you after we get out from under here with the new gasket, but sometimes the old gasket will stick to this, and then when you put the new filter on, you're double gasketing it, and it's not meant for that, and then that will leak. So you want to make sure this area is just clean, and if the oil filter gasket stuck on this mating surface. So once you have that cleaned, we'll go back up top. I'm going to show you how to prepare the oil filter to put on. Basically, we want to fill it with oil, and I'll show you that gasket I was talking about. Okay, we're getting ready to put the oil filter back on, but before we do, I wanted to talk a little bit about that. The oil filter I use are Fram Extra Guards. The number for those are PH4967. I will always buy these by the case, so I get 12 at a time. I get them a lot cheaper that way. And so you can essentially cut your cost of filters in half as well by buying them in bulk. And since I know I'm going to keep my car for a while, I'll easily go through 12, so that's how I buy them. But again, PH4967 is the number here. And then I want to also show you the oil filter itself, and I want to show you that gasket I was talking about. See this black little ring around the top of the filter? That's the gasket. You always want to make sure that's there. If that's not there, it's not going to seal, and you are for sure going to have an oil leak. And that's what you don't want to have stuck on the surface, mating surface of the car that we talked about earlier. When we clean off the face, it should be metal, the machine surface of the engine block, when you're putting this new filter back on. So one other thing is you want to fill this oil filter up with oil and put a light coat of oil on the seal prior to assembling it back onto the car. So I always have a little bit of extra oil from quarts that I used previously. So again, you just want to kind of fill it up here, pour it right down the hole in the center, and then you'll see it come up out of that hole. It'll soak back down in there a little bit, and then a little more. And again, it doesn't have to be perfectly full, 100% full, but that just helps with the startup so that your engine isn't running dry, because it goes through this filter before it goes up into your engine. By filling this up when you start it up, you'll have oil pressure immediately. So then again, the last thing I do is I just dip my finger in there a little bit, and then I just put a little bit of oil on the surface of the filter gasket. That'll keep it from binding and pinching, and again, it'll give you a perfect seal every time. So I'm going to take this under the car now, and we're going to assemble it onto the engine block, and then we'll be all set underneath the car. So I've got my new oil filter all filled up with oil, and the gasket lightly coated with oil. And now I just take it up to that mounting surface, and you can see that there's a little screw there, and you just turn it clockwise. And just takes a little jimmying sometimes, but it'll quickly get started there. And then you can see it spins real freely. So you want to turn it until the gasket seats. Once it touches, and then what you want to do is take it one full turn. So you put your wrench on there. And then go one full turn. And so I use the handle as a guide here. So I was there, and then I just bring it around. And there's a turn. And so that's all you need to do. Sometimes that gets a little stuck on there. I just rock it a little bit, pops it right off. And there's your filter installed. Okay, now that we've got an airplane overhead. Okay, now that we've got the old oil drained out, we've got the oil plugged back in, we've got the new filter on, we're going to go ahead and add oil. To do that, we simply just unscrew this little plug right here. You can see it's got SAE 530, it's oil, and it says engine oil on it. So you just take that off, and then you take a funnel, put a funnel in there, and then we're going to take our new oil, in this case Quaker State synthetic, and I happen to know this car takes a little over 4.5 quarts, so not quite as much as what's in here, but I'm going to pour the majority of it in. You can always tell how much your car needs by your owner's manual. It says in the owner's manual how many quarts it'll take when it's empty. So we'll go ahead and fill it up now. Okay, so I've added my 4.5 quarts. I'm going to go ahead and take this funnel out. I like to always take a rag and kind of stick underneath it. That way you're not dripping oil all over everything as you're moving around. And then go ahead and screw this on. Make sure it's clean, which it is. So just screw that back on. You don't have to grill this. Just snug it up. That's all you got to do. And then I wipe up any oil that has gotten on anything. And then we're ready to start it up and check for leaks. So I'm going to let it run a minute. That lets the oil circulate through the engine. My engine oil light went off, which means I've got good oil pressure. I'm just going to let it run for a few minutes. And then I'm going to get out and I'm going to look and make sure there aren't any leaks around the oil filter or drain plug. And then I'm going to do a final check of my oil level, and then we'll be done with the oil change. So I let the car run for a little while and then I shut it off. I've looked underneath for any leaks around the oil filter and the oil drain plug, and neither are leaking. So I know I'm good there. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to check the oil level to make sure I put enough oil in it. And here's the oil dipstick right here. So I'm going to pull that out. I run a rag across it, clean it off, then I stick it back in. Then I pull it out again, and then I look to see where the level is. And you can see here, here's the full mark. Here's where the oil is, so it's just a little bit below the full mark. So here's the add mark down here. So actually I'd be good to go and drive the car right now as it is. But I'm probably going to put just a little bit in, top it off, and then we're good to go. So I know some of you are asking, well, Gary, what do you do with the waste oil from your oil change? Well, what I do is I take it and I put it back in the original container. So again, one of the great reasons for having this handy duty little drain pan, and you use the same pan in the funnel, you just pour it back into the original container that you got the new oil out of. And then what I do is I keep this, I'll store it for a couple years worth anyway, and I know a local recycler, somebody that takes it for recycling, and so I'll take my waste oil there. Never put waste oil in the regular trash, okay? So most landfills aren't designed to handle, and I think it may even be against the law to dispose of waste oil in your regular garbage trash. So I just simply Googled waste oil at my location and came up with multiple places where they will accept waste oil, because they recycle it. They'll use it to either burn or do other things with, I guess. But just please make sure you don't put your waste oil in your regular garbage, but rather recycle it to someone who does recycling in your local community. Okay. Now that I've topped off the oil and I know it's full, I'm going to go ahead and close the hood now. To do that, I simply just lift it up a little, take the pressure off this prop rod, put the prop rod back in its little holder, snap it down, and then what I do is I just kind of drop it from about here and it shuts itself. I know sometimes folks will put it down and then close it by pushing on it, but sometimes you can dent it. So I've just learned to kind of drop it a little bit and it snaps right in there. So last thing we need to do is just reset the maintenance light, which is what told me I needed to change the oil in the first place. So we'll go inside the car now and I'll show you how to reset that maintenance light and get that cleared so it starts tracking again the next 5,000 miles. Okay, so the last thing we need to do to complete our oil change on the Toyota Corolla is to get rid of this maintenance required light. You can see there in orange at the bottom. And to do that, what we do is we basically take the key, we turn it to the AC position, then we push in the trip meter button and turn it to on for 5 seconds. And at that point the light should go out, which it did go out. So then don't forget to turn your key back off, otherwise you'll kill it. Let's start it up. Make sure, yep, the light goes out. And that's how you clear the maintenance required light. And just as a reminder, the instructions for how to turn off the maintenance required light can be found in the owner's manual on page 110. We've marked it here with the page because there's a lot of information in this manual. And I swear for the first time it took me, you know, I'd look through the whole darn thing for it. And then after a few times of that, kind of the light bulb went off, and I said, why don't I mark this page and make it a little bit easier? So that's the big tip. Mark one page, page 110, crease it, then you'll know where it is. But the instructions for how to clear that light are found in your owner's manual. Working on my 1996 Astro van. The problem that we've got is the speedometer has went all the way around and pegged to like indicating we're going 160 miles an hour. And